Hello and welcome to this GMS tutorial, intended for HFU officers and fund managers who wish to set up and launch an allocation on the GMS. We strongly advise configuring the allocation elements in the order that will be presented in this tutorial, as it has proven to be the most adept and time-efficient method. In order to create and configure an allocation on the GMS, you should start by adding HRP strategic objectives. To add a new global strategic objective, go to the Manage Global HRP SO page by following this navigation. Click on Add HRP SO. In the pop-up window, select the HRP year, the HRP, the prefix, and enter a description of the strategic objective. Then, click on Save. The second step of the process is adding the sector-specific objectives to the GMS. To add and manage SSO, go to the Manage SSO page by following this navigation. Go to the end of the SSO list, and enter the SSO title in the editable field. Select the cluster and the year in the respective drop-down lists. Finally, select the related HRP and click on the blue plus icon to save the SSO. As long as there are no projects linked to the new SSO, you have the possibility to delete and edit it. When there are linked projects, you can still edit the title, however you can no longer delete the SSO. You can see which are the linked projects by clicking here. The third step is adding and saving the cluster's indicators. To do so, go to the Cluster Indicators page by following this navigation. Fill in all mandatory fields and click on Save Record. You can find the newly created indicator in the list below. You can delete and edit the indicator as long as there are no project linked to it. You can still edit the indicator when projects are linked, however, you can no longer delete it. To view the linked projects, click on View Linked Projects. The fourth and optional step of the process is creating and saving standard activities. If you wish to add standard activities that partners will have to include in their logical framework, go to the Manage Standard Activities page by following this navigation. Fill in all mandatory fields and click on Save Record. The newly created standard activity appears in the list below. As usual, you can delete and edit the line until projects are linked to the allocation. The fifth and last element you are required to configure before creating an allocation is the Strategic Review Scorecard. To do so, go to the Manage SRC Scorecards page by following this navigation. You can either create a new scorecard or copy it from a previous one. Please be aware you must create a new scorecard for each allocation. You have the possibility to edit the new scorecard until the allocation's strategic review process of the submitted project proposals starts. To learn more on how to create and manage strategic review scorecards, please refer to the dedicated Help Portal article. You have now configured all elements of the future allocation. It's time to create the allocation itself. To create a new allocation on the GMS, go to the Manage Allocation Types page by following this navigation. You need to fill in all mandatory fields of this form. The mandatory fields are indicated with the red asterisks. Tick the box, Publish, to publish the allocation information on the Business Intelligence portal. This does not trigger the launch of the allocation on the GMS. The information that will be visible on the BI are indicated by the green asterisks. If you previously created standard activities for the partners to choose from in their logical framework, tick this box on the right-hand side. In the project code abbreviation field, insert the abbreviation SA if it is a standard allocation, and RA if it is a reserve allocation, followed by its allocation number. For instance, if it is the second standard allocation launched in 2020, its abbreviation should read SA2. Select the fixed audit cost type. It should always be fixed and not %. Link your allocation to the corresponding HRP plans. You can select multiple plans. Link your allocation to your previously created scorecard by selecting it in the drop-down list. Remember, you can edit the scorecard after the launch of the allocation, and up until the strategic review stage of the project workflow. Insert here the submission start and end date of project proposals. This determines the window of visibility of this allocation on the GMS by partners. The start date represents the launch date of the allocation on the GMS, while the end date represents the deadline for partners to submit their project proposals in the GMS. Then, click on Save and Stay. You can edit the information of the form up until the allocation launch date. After clicking on Save, a pop-up window will show the allocation default cost tracking elements. Click on Continue. You will be able to reconfigure these elements later. Your new allocation is saved in the list below. The allocation will be open and visible on GMS to all eligible partners at the time and date you inserted in the allocation configuration page. Now that the allocation has been created, you need to link it with all the previously configured elements, namely the SO and SSO. You are also advised to describe the cluster's priorities and to configure the cost tracking components. To do so, go to the allocation type configuration page by following this navigation. Select your new allocation from the list by clicking on Edit. Let's start by linking the HRP strategic objectives and the sector-specific objectives. To do so, click on Manage HRP. In the bottom section, select from the drop-down list one HRP SO. And click on the blue plus icon. Then, click on Link SSO to link the SSOs to the newly added SO. In the pop-up window, select the cluster and tick the boxes of the SSOs you wish to link. Click on Save. If you wish to unlink an SSO from the SO, click on the red cross in the same pop-up window. When the allocation is launched, eligible partners will be able to view the HRP SO and SSO on their homepage, by clicking on the CO icon of the allocation line. After saving the SO and SSO, we can now set up the cluster's priorities. To do so, go back to the previous screen by clicking on Back to Allocation Type Configuration. Click on Cluster Priorities. Select a cluster, and enter in the editable fields both the cluster priority activities description, as well as the cluster geographical priorities. Then, click on the blue plus icon. You can edit or delete the cluster's priorities until the launch of the allocation. The implementing partners will have access to these clusters' priorities on the allocations line of their homepage by clicking on the corresponding CP folder. From the clusters priorities page, go back to the allocation type configuration to configure the cost tracking components by clicking on Back. Click on Link Cost Tracking Component. The system will have automatically picked the most relevant cost tracking components. You can change these components by unticking their boxes and clicking on Save Changes and Recompute. Lastly, you need to upload the documents pertaining to your new allocation, especially the allocation strategy paper. To do so, go to the Allocation Type document page by following this navigation. You can also add documents from the Allocation Creation page by clicking on this button. Select from the drop-down list the allocation you created and configured. Then upload documents through this section on the right-hand side. The most important section is the Partner Allocation section. This section is important as the implementing partners will be able to view and download the documents saved in this category in the Allocations line of their homepage, by clicking on the green folder. The documents uploaded under the Partner Allocation section will also be publicly available on the CBPF Business Intelligence portal, under the Allocation Timeline infographic. You have now configured your allocation. Remember, the allocation will be automatically launched on the GMS and visible to the eligible implementing partners at the time and date you inserted in the allocation form. This is the end of our tutorial on how to set up and launch an allocation on the GMS. We hope it was useful. Should you face any issue during the allocation setup and launch process, or have any comments, do not hesitate to contact us at this address.